Hello everyone and welcome back. In today's video, I'll tell you how you can uncover hidden horsepower in your engine build. But it's not for everyone, and it can also have negative effects you may not find too appealing. There will be a little science and physics to discuss because I want you to fully understand what's at play before you make a buying decision. So sit back, relax, and let's get to it. Crankshaft lightning seems to be a recent trend in the mainstream, yet it goes back to the days the first bikes and cars were modified to go faster. The concept is really not anything new, but I get several calls a week from people asking about it. We've got to remember that everyone who watches the channel may not have a thorough knowledge of how engines work, so let's start with the basics. We have to first get our terminology correct to fully understand the physics of what's going on. Many folks will interchangeably call these two items flywheels or crankshafts. Technically speaking, what we're looking at are crankshaft assemblies because they consist of multiple pieces, two of which are flywheels having one on each side. Now, in simple terms, we have two flywheels assembled to make a crankshaft. Every reciprocating engine has a flywheel of sorts, even steam engines. There is a science to determining what the weight of a flywheel should be, and factors like operating range, intended RPM, the number of cylinders, power output, and load all play a factor. Now, I'm sure you've seen old hit-and-miss single-cylinder engines that have huge flywheels on them. They're large to help govern RPM, but also because of their weight, they store a large amount of kinetic energy, which is the energy of motion. In physics terms, flywheels use the conservation of angular momentum to store rotational energy, which is proportional to the product of its moment of inertia and the square of its rotational speed, but that's probably going a little too far. So to simplify and better explain, flywheels are large counterweights designed to stabilize and slow down RPM response. This slow and safe stability offers RPM comfort while working through traffic or cruising in steady RPM range down the highway. Now, a heavier flywheel or crankshaft assembly will make an engine run smoother, and it can provide a little extra push to assist the engine during normal operation while under load. The trade-off is that this extra weight also creates a parasitic loss during acceleration, and it will reduce your horsepower output. There is no question, all other things being equal, an engine with a lighter flywheel or crankshaft assembly will produce more horsepower. It will accelerate quicker under load and be more responsive to quick rider input or RPM changes. It'll also decelerate much quicker under load. This is great in, say, road racing environments where riders go into corners fast, braking as late as possible, then blast out of a turn, or in very light vehicles where you want a near immediate response to rider or driver input. The downside is if you have a heavier bike or heavier rider, or more often find yourself in moderate or steady state riding like touring, it'll make the engine feel jerky. You also may very well notice a substantial increase in fuel consumption because you no longer have the assistance of inertia to help you spin the engine over during those times you're on, off, then back on the throttle. You wouldn't really want a light crank in an engine that is being used primarily for pulling or where low-end torque is a focus because the extra weight increases reciprocating momentum and can, in fact, help the lower portion of the RPM range of the engine, especially engines that have a manual transmission behind them where you're on and off the throttle during gear changes. Dark Horse Crankworks custom built both of these assemblies for us based on our provided specification. This one is for Ken out of Minnesota, and this one is for Steve and Robin out of West Central Georgia. As we do with all of our custom engines, we have Dark Horse custom build a crank that suits you and your riding style perfectly. Things like engine size, RPM riding range, compression ratio, camshaft, just a few factors that determine how your crank will be done. Now, both of these have their man-of-war H-beam rods. Both have been balanced, both have been plugged, they've been trued, they've been welded at the crank pin, and they'll all receive a tapered main bearing. Both of these assemblies are 4 3/8 stroke and would fit in an 07 or later twin cam A motor, but they couldn't be more different when it comes to the details. As you can see, Ken's has been lightened quite a bit, both in the windows here and along the inner edge of the wheel. Ken is a light fella. He mostly rides one up. He rides in the mid to upper RPM range and wanted this engine to respond like we would expect a lightened crankshaft assembly to operate. Now, as for Steve and Robin, they mostly ride two up. They spend their time touring. They wanted an engine that would operate smoothly for their leisure rides in the twisties and long highway or back road stretches as well. Each has a purpose and a goal. One other aspect of crankshaft design to consider is knife edging, where these areas of the wheel here are cut in at a taper. So yes, knife edging can reduce turbulence in a crankcase. However, most of those effects really only happen at extremely high RPMs. The vast majority of riders on the street would never even feel the difference on a crank that has been knife edged or hasn't. Now, I hope this better explains the pros and cons of crankshaft lightening. Bottom line, there is no engine that's perfect for everyone, but there can be a perfect engine for you. There's some great content coming and being edited now. I'll be installing and reviewing the Jim's Force Flow fan, then installing our new Skunk Series tappets along with the fit kits, Jim's tappet covers and pushrod tube kits for M8. Then we'll be moving to the Trask M8 vented transmission top cover and an entire video series on the long-awaited shovel head build from bottom to top. I look forward to seeing all of you there, and don't forget about our Teespring store if you'd like to support the channel, and a huge thanks to all of our channel members for being part of it. As always, take care of yourselves and each other. Have a good one.